Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. Just going to give it a second as people filter in out of the waiting room. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, my name is Amber Walsh. I'm an admissions officer here at the Yale School of Management. I oversee Silver Scholars as well as our joint degrees and the full-time MBA. And today we're going to be talking about our Silver Scholars Program, which is a very unique program across MBA programs globally. And we're going to have with us three panelists who are going to talk to us about their experience as students. All three of them are current students. And the objective really is to answer some of your questions about the experience. I should note that this is not an admissions Q&A. So the focus will really be on the experience of the students themselves. But I did want to note that we will have a admissions focused Silver Scholars Q&A on March 13th, I believe. So if you go to our event website, maybe Jen will put that in the chat for us. My colleague Jen Jansen will be in the chat and Q&A, helping us filter through those. We're going to use the Q&A for questions that come in. Some of you submitted some questions in advance, and I've tried to integrate those into our panel questions. But if other questions come up, please feel free to put those into the Q&A. I'm going to start with a very brief presentation because I want the focus to be on questions to our panelists. But just so that we're all on the same page of what the Silver Scholars Program is, I am just going to go through a few quick slides. So the Silver Scholars Program is a unique program for folks that are coming out of undergrad or don't have a full year of full-time work experience post-undergrad. So maybe they're coming out of a master's program as well. So they know what they want to do. They want to accelerate their career journeys. So they just want to pursue an MBA degree immediately after graduation and begin learning, getting those management skills up front through our core curriculum, expanding their network among experienced classmates and alumni that they'll be exposed to through the program, early access to graduate level career development office and the professional clubs, and again, like really being able to accelerate their career early on, as opposed to a more traditional MBA path where you work for several years, you're exploring what you want to do and pursuing an MBA at a later time. Both of those paths are great. This is just another entrance to an MBA experience. So the structure of the program is unique in that you start, so let's say you're applying this year for round 3, you're planning to enroll in the program this fall, right? So in August, we kick off, you come to the School of Management for our integrated core curriculum. So you're really getting that management toolkit. You're learning in a cohort structure. Your learning teams, you're fully integrated into the full-time MBA class. So you're doing that for a year, and then you go off for professional work experience. So this can be 1 to up to 5 years. And this can look very different for different folks. So maybe you're working on your startup. Maybe you are doing a series of shorter term project-driven employment opportunities. Maybe you are working at the same place for 1 to several years. So it can look very different. The CDO will work with you. The Career Development Office would work with you to kind of define what kind of experience do you want to have during this period. So you're out there learning, getting that professional experience, and then you're returning for your second year at the School of Management, the second year of your MBA. And I think something that's really nice and unique about the School of Management is that second year is entirely electives. And not just electives at the School of Management, but really across the Yale campus. So you're coming back, You've identified maybe some skills that you want to fill in. You have some new interests you want to explore. And so you can really personalize that experience to what you want it to be. So this is the structure of it. And really, again, you can have that professional work experience as a minimum of 1 year, but it can be up to 5 years. And, the most common question is, who gets in? What kind of profile are you looking for? And we don't favor, and I think seeing some of the profiles, and if you want to look online for some of these folks, I think these are all student ambassadors who are willing to engage with prospective students. We're not favoring a particular industry or major. There are no quotas for regions or countries. And there isn't a singular candidate profile that is most desirable. We're looking for diversity of our applicant pool. We want people to be interested in different industries, to have different foundations for their areas of studies, cultural diversity, diverse points of view. This makes the learning environment that much more dynamic in the classroom. So we're really encourage that and want to discourage people thinking like, oh, I have to fit into a particular profile. I have to have had certain classes that I've taken in undergrad, all of those things that those are not requirements for this program. We take a really holistic approach to reviewing the applications. So again, we'll talk more about admissions in the Q&A that will be later this month, but we're generally looking for folks that are academically prepared, that have some demonstration of leadership and impact. So this can have different forms, maybe it's in your internships or your participation in clubs or activities that you participated in your community, and people that are going to be good community members. I think you'll hear from our panelists as well, like culture is a big thing at the School of Management. We very supportive culture, and we want people that are going to come in and be a good community member, participate, be active in the learning experience of everyone else that is part of the program. And I will note that we have several joint degree options, and so all of these are options for Silver Scholars as well. So it usually shortens the time frame in which you're able to complete those. You still have the employment requirement in the middle, but you're also able to pursue these joint degrees with other schools. The only one that is not available for Silver Scholars is the accelerated Master's in Public Health, a 2-year degree. And then very quickly on admissions, it's the exact same application as it is for the regular MBA applications, just a couple differences in terms of the letters of recommendation. For Silver Scholars, we're looking for 1 professional letter of recommendation and 1 academic letter of recommendation. And the other thing that is a little different is that the interviews, which are by invitation only for all candidates, but the Silver Scholars are interviewed by admissions officers. So that's a very quick overview. Again, please sign up for some of our future events to learn more about the admissions process. And now I want to move on to get to the good stuff, which is talking to our current students. Oh, great. And Erin is here as well, who I know is coming directly from a final exam, as I understand. So thank you so much for doing that. So I'm just going to jump and ask each of you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about where you're from, where did you study, what was your major, and a little bit about why the Silver Scholars Program was the path that you chose to pursue. So just jumping in there, I've lost my Zoom screen here. Patrick, why don't you start us off?
Sure, pleasure, and thanks for the intro, Amber. Look, I did my undergrad in the UK, actually. I went to the University of Warwick and read economics and Russian language there. And then Warwick is a big banking school, so naturally I went down that path as well. I still vividly remember in my first week in undergrad, I ended up applying to investment banking, having no idea what an investment bank does, but it was kind of the thing everyone was doing. And so I just went with that. And after the 3 years, I found myself having gone through the spring internships, summer internships, and accepting a full-time offer. And I also knew very early on that I did not want to stick around at the investment bank. It just wasn't the type of work that was for me. I was looking for something a little more intellectually challenging and more diverse, perhaps. And so I figured that the career trajectory of investment banking is still kind of nice to have. You get promoted every year or so. Your paycheck is rising steadily alongside that. And you have plenty of options opening up in the future. And I think if there's one thing I always spend a lot of time considering is how do you design a life so that your trajectory, your tree of potential next steps becomes bigger and bigger over time. And so I decided it had to be something else than investment banking, but it also had to tick those boxes. So I ended up applying to two different things. One was Yale with the Silver Scholar program, which was my only MBA application. And the second one was strategy consulting at BCG. And I was incredibly fortunate in that both worked out for me. I was able to accept both offers and work out between BCG and Yale how I could fit everything together. So I spent a year at Yale first, being a sponsored consultant from BCG, then went to work 2.5 years full-time at BCG. And now I'm back as my second year before returning to BCG again. So sorry, that's a slightly longer introduction than what you'd perhaps asked for, but I hope it provides some helpful
No,
context.
I think that's perfect, and I'm looking forward to digging in a little bit more about your experience at BCG and what your next steps are later on in the panel. Ziyi, can you give us a little introduction to yourself?
Yes, hi everyone. My name's Ziyi, and then grew up in Beijing, China, and I went here for my undergrad. I went to Babson and then studied economics and finance. So in college, I was kind of more indecisive of what I want to do afterwards. I was on the law school track for the longest time, and then realized I want to do finance. So when I graduated, I had an offer in finance, but I'm not sure whether that's like the division I want to in because I really want to go into more investor role instead of more quant side. So I applied for the program because I thought Yale is a really good brand name, and then this program sounds like it can accelerate my career. So holding those thoughts, I applied for SOM, and I got in, and then my gap year experience a little bit different. I started off doing banking internship at Lazard in New York for a summer, and then I moved to Hong Kong and worked at Bain for 2 years. I thought it was like the right time to move back to the US market, so that's why I came back to school this year. In terms of what I want to do afterwards, I'm actually still exploring. So I'm just like taking classes this year to like fully explore what I want to do, but potentially probably investment role in like PE or BC.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Aaron.
Hi everyone, I'm Aaron. I'm a first year Silver Scholar. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. I did my undergrad at Princeton where I studied economics and theater. My background is in entertainment. I actually started my own entertainment production entity before coming to SOM. For me, the Silver Scholars Program was really appealing in the sense that I could have time to work on my own venture during the gap time. So I was able to get additional business skills while still having time to pursue my entertainment passion and venture on the side. Good to meet you all.
Excellent. So I'd love for you each to tell us a little bit about your experience. I touched on, how important the culture is at SOM. How did that play in your decision to apply to the Silver Scholars Program? How did you connect with students prior to enrolling? Like, how did you decide that this was a program that was interesting enough for you to apply and then later enroll?
I'm happy to kick it off. My first experience with the culture at SOM was when I was invited to interview. If you were able to attend the interview in person, I highly encourage it. You get a sense of the campus, you get a sense of the community, and it's really true that Yale students and SOM students, the culture is very specific and it's very supportive. Everybody that's here, has your best interest at heart. They want to support you. So being here, experiencing that for me was a huge selling point. I got to interact with some of the professors, sit in on a class, network with some of my peers who are now in my cohort. So having the ability to connect with people during the interview day, visit campus before was a huge selling point for me.
I can connect to that and really mirror a lot of what you just mentioned. There was one other program I was considering, which would have been a deferred program, because Yale really is relatively unique when it comes to the exact structure of the Silver Scholar program. So that was a big driver. Nevertheless, one unnamed deferred program was also on my list. And I actually ended up visiting campus for the other program and paying them a visit. And I attended a very sterile presentation and then a quick 5-minute chat with the admissions team, and that was it again. And then on my way back from that visit, I got to stop over in New York, and so I went up to Yale and paid Yale a visit. And there wasn't any official event happening or anything. I actually just reached out to Maria, who used to be with the Silver Scholar admission team and is now another team. And she immediately responded. She offered to have someone pick me up at the station, show me a tour, give me a tour of the campus. I grabbed some lunch with fellow Silver Scholars, and then sat in some lectures as well. And so the experience was just such an incredibly opposite of what I had just had the day before, that there was no question left that this was the only program I was applying to, and if it didn't work out, that would be fine, and I would just be doing something else.
I love that you had such a positive experience with admissions, Patrick. That warms my heart. Ziyi, do you have something else to add to that?
Yeah, so I didn't do on-campus due diligence, but then I think my recruitment happens during COVID, but then I did a lot of online engagement. I remember I had interest about this program when I was in junior year, and I started to attend every single admission event online just so I can hear more experience. And then eventually I also get to know Maria more. So I think just the ability to really connect with admission officer is something very unique about Yale. Just everyone's so approachable, both for existing student, alum, and also the broader Yale community. Even they're not in Yale SOM, they can provide a perspective about how's the campus life being.
Excellent. And on that note, I'm attaching my email to the chat if people need to reach out. And we have ongoing campus visits. So if you are in the area, I definitely recommend stopping by to visit. We don't have a specific one for Silver Scholars, but in a way, I think it's nice that you see all of the prospective students, because you are fully integrated into that class. And I think one of the apprehensions I hear from candidates is like, how am I going to feel as a Silver Scholar in a classroom of folks that, for example, and I didn't mention this in the beginning, but I'm an alum and I came in with 10 years of work experience. So how did you all feel, and how does the structure of the program maybe facilitate your integration into the MBA class? Anyone can feel free to jump in and take that question.
I will say I don't feel particularly out of place at all. Everybody's super welcoming. Everybody kind of blends together. So I don't feel out of place at all. I will say the unique structure with the gap time, if you do choose to take one or more gap years, you come back, you're with entirely new people, both first and second years. So you essentially get the opportunity to meet twice as many people, which is a really rare opportunity. So yeah, I encourage you to take advantage of that and talk to as many people as you can.
Totally second that, and I would add what's really wonderful about Yale is and I probably underestimated this even before coming, is how there is a much broader community than just SOM available to you. So I loved my cohort. I had a great time with my cohort and everyone else at the MBA program, and can only mirror that were totally accepting. There was no question asked about whether I'm a Silver Scholar or not. But what was even greater to me as someone who had done a 3-year undergrad degree partially during the pandemic, and I mentioned this to Amber earlier, I definitely felt that I had a bit of catching up to do on my undergrad experience, is that it was also incredibly easy to fit in with the broader Yale community. I took a bunch of undergrad classes I went to tons of events. I still do, actually. I'm a member of a few of the fellowships and clubs across campus. And there really is no differentiation between being a Silver Scholar, an MBA, or anything else. Yale is a really united and open community.
Yes, I echo on the point that Silver Scholar integrated really well into the whole program. I think that applies to same for first year and second year. And then what surprised me is that this year I truly felt the benefit of Silver Scholar because the people I know in my first year, both like those two first year and second year that I met in 21, they're now working. So I'm more able to just reach out to an old classmate, say, hey, I want to know more about your experience, and then can you reach me like someone in the firm? So in terms of like purely networking, when I come back to school and I really want to like pivot into a different industry, it has been so incredibly helpful. And I don't think you're able to achieve that if you have attended a traditional MBA program.
Those are really excellent points. And I think I'd love for you all to talk, because I know one of the other things that people are really curious, and I see a question coming through on the chat as well, is, how does that, what support is available to you all, through the, let's say, the career development office and professional clubs, like which resources were valuable for you? And Ziyi and Patrick, who have gone through the process, what was that process like, looking for that first internship or employment experience for your gap time?
I can start first. I think the professional club helps me a lot. I remember I started to engage after I applied round 3, and then after I received the offer, I directly just like connect with like the consulting club and the investment banking club. So the whole engagement really starts in the summer before I even officially enroll in the school. And then during the summer, I remember I was practicing casing for consulting, practicing technicals. There's a lot of material provided by the club. Now I know they have even more structural instruction tailored for Silver Scholar, both from like finance club as well as consulting club, just like help them to tailor their experience, and also show staff who's like, hey, this is like what past Silver Scholar have done in terms of getting the first internship for the gap year, and here's the stats, here's are the people that you can reach out to. And it has been incredibly helpful just to have that guideline and also see how people did it in the past.
Yeah, I will leave the side of the table to Z, because I've actually had this insane luxury of never having to recruit at SOM throughout my entire time. So I can maybe add a little bit of detail from the other side. Namely, I have been supporting BCG's recruiting on campus very actively. And so I think it's somewhat representative for what a lot of employers will be doing. And what's really cool about being in a professional environment where people have already worked at companies before is that you can build on them to create these more natural engagement opportunities and places. So I've been to loads of dinners with people applying to BCG. BCG has been paying for me to have coffee with anyone who has any interest in BCG whatsoever. I've, of course, been having separate meetups and events with Silver Scholars specifically. And I've seen this again from many companies, many industries. So it is a very, very lively community, and it is very much a mutual support community because everyone has been on both sides of the table in many cases. So as Silver Scholars, you're probably among the few students who haven't yet recruited someone for your team. But what's worthwhile bearing in mind is that many of the other students around you have already been leading interviews, have been making hiring decisions, and that is actually an incredibly valuable resource to build on.
Absolutely. And Aaron, you're a first year student, and how is that going for you? Have you already identified your activities for the next year? What resources have been useful to you?
Absolutely. I will say the career development office has been invaluable in terms of my career trajectory and providing me with resources. I'm also a part of the Media Entertainment Club, which is a professional club aimed at preparing students for careers in the media entertainment industry. There's also, I guess, there's two types of clubs. There are professional clubs whose main goal is focus on employment and preparing you for work in a particular field. And then there are what we like to call, I guess, fun clubs or social clubs. So I'm a part of the Arts and Culture Club. We had an open mic last week, which was a huge hit. So being a part of both, the business side of things with the Media Entertainment Club, but also some of these more relaxed social clubs is a great way to connect with people. With respect to the Career Development Office, there are a wonderful team of career development advisors whose job is to coach you, to prepare you for interviews, to help you make decisions. Julia Burke, she works a lot with Silver Scholars. She's hugely helpful. She's helped me a lot. So there's a whole team of people here to support you at SOM should you come.
Excellent. And Erin, I'm just going to stay with you for a second to ask about you're right now in the core curriculum, you're just coming from a final. Tell us about your classroom experience, maybe just touch on the cohort and learning team structure, and maybe if you have a favorite class that you're participating in right now.
I just came from my sourcing and managing funds exam, which I hope went well. I think it went well. So the core classes, everybody during the first year takes more or less the same courses. This is it's designed to give you a broad perspective on different stakeholder perspectives within a business, customer, state, society, investor. The classes are designed to give you a plurality of perspectives. Another unique thing about the SOM experience is the cohort structure. So the class is divided into 5 cohorts of roughly 70 people, and you follow these 70 people class to class. So even though the class size is reasonably large, 350 people, you get a very intimate learning experience. You get to know these people very well, and you develop a rapport and relationship with them. Even smaller, we have learning teams. So within your cohort of 70, you're divided into learning teams of 8 people, and these people, they're a resource for you. You rely on each other to prepare for exams. You work through group projects together. I'm very close with my learning team. We bonded a lot studying and doing different activities together. So the learning experience is you get a lot of individual attention, and there's a lot of bonding within the cohort structure.
Ziyi and Patrick, I would love for you to talk about your gap experiences and how that has informed how you're spending your time in your second year. And I think Ziyi, you mentioned like you may have shifted your career plans a little bit. So I'd love for you to elaborate on that, just in terms of how that experience was useful to you and how you're using that experience to take these next steps, whether it's choosing courses across SOM and Yale and thinking about your next steps post MBA.
Yeah, 100%. I think when I was in college and first year, I was a little bit indecisive of like going to banking versus consulting, which is like the 2 most popular career paths. And I feel like the gap year designed by the Silver Scholar program really enabled me to work in both career paths and then evaluate what's the pros and cons. I will say in the middle, the process was a little bit chaotic. Like there was a lot of international moving country type of things I have to deal with, but then you also get to have a more exciting 20s experience. And then I think in terms of what has that experience helped me is that I now worked in different career paths. I know what I want. I also know before I go into the career, like the job, to know that here is a set of skill sets I want to gain from my experience here. And then, can you guys hear me? Okay. Here is a set of experience I want to like gain at this job, but I also know from my first year MBA that this is not the end to my career, and I know exactly where my next step is. And then the CDO has been helping me a lot when I was in my gap year. Julia, like what Erin said, has been like talking to me almost every single month for a whole year when I was in my second year, because I just didn't know whether I want to continue, like do another year of gap year and then like find a different job, where I want to come back to school. So I think having that perspective and I have the support from Yale like throughout my gap year has been incredibly helpful, and it was also enabling me to take more risks and then try things I would not have been able to do.
Excellent. And just as an alum too, I think that one of the nice things about Career Development Office and all of these resources, access to the alumni network, like those don't even end as a student, but go on forever. And they're incredible resources, and they really are there to support you through the process. So thanks for highlighting that. Patrick, tell us about your experience.
Sure, it's been an absolute roller coaster. It was nonstop. So I joined BCG straight after the end of my first year. It initially wasn't the biggest fan because especially during the first 2 or 3 months, it felt a bit similar to my investment banking experience. I was like, oh, I'm doing slides and Excels again. This is kind of what I wanted to escape from. And also during my first year at SOM, I had spent a lot of time building a startup. And that just felt like the more exciting path at the time. But then I had a bit of a turnaround when after a few months I had what's called time on the beach in consulting. So you get paid, but you spend your days at the gym or in your living room and waiting for a new project. And I'd always wanted to build an app by myself. And so this was the days when AI was just starting to emerge. So I built a little AI encryption app that would let you securely communicate with some of the early emerging AIs. It wasn't ChatGPT yet, but something similar. And I was lucky that this app sort of blew up a little bit, attracted 10,000 users in the first week, and initially led into a lot of trouble with BCG. And there were some very serious questions as to what I was doing, coding apps instead of working on PowerPoints, and that maybe I just wasn't kept busy enough at the firm. But luckily, it also coincided with a big shift within BCG's leadership of focusing more on AI and expanding and driving those initiatives. And so I was in the right place at the right time. And ended up becoming an AI expert at BCG, and having then the freedom to work across projects around the world. In my first gap year, I got an insane 127 flights, and I was traveling around the world doing AI wherever I could, and just had an absolute blast. And here's where SOM comes into play again. Naturally, I knew at some point I wanted to come back and get a bit more time off, because what I really learned during my gap period was that the free time and the time to think about things that are unrelated to your career was, to me, the most valuable thing about being at SOM. And so I really wanted to indulge that, go to all sorts of events that are happening across Yale, completely unrelated to careers as well. And secondly, I wanted to pivot out of the Middle East, where I'd spent the majority of my gap period working across Dubai, Riyadh, and a little bit of Europe as well. And I wanted to move to the US because that's where AI was happening and still is, obviously. And luckily, by being able to move back and do my second year here, I was able to connect that with transferring across BCG globally as well, so that I'm now part of the BCG West Coast team, even closer to the source of AI. I got the time in to reflect and do some other things. In the meantime, I've been building a few more AI ventures myself. And I'm now re-energized and in a better position than ever to keep pushing forward. So I really owe a lot to this joker that was up my sleeve after first departing from the initial year, and can highly recommend to everyone to take that gap year. I know there is a tendency lately among silver scholars to maybe just try and skip it, go straight for the MBA because you'll be like the youngest MBA ever or something. And I'm sure it works for some people. And in that case, by all means, go for it. But I felt that the value of having this joker that you can pull out at any time was even greater to me, and justified the program being a little unique and unusual and sometimes harder to explain, because it just opens up so many more paths. And it goes back to what I said in the beginning: when you look at your life as this tree of different options you have, having the gap period and then the opportunity to come back just like doubles the number of paths that you have ahead of you.
Yeah, I love that. I think that is one of the advantages, is that you can go down a path that you're like, this is what I think I want to do. But you can also take risks and you can take on projects and you can experiment a little. I know some silver scholars will, spend their time doing several experiences. But did you almost get a reset when you come back to SOM? So if you want to pivot again to something new or have a different approach with it, you can. You're not kind of on this like pigeonholed career path that you can't kind of move out of easily. So I think that's something that is very valuable for the team. And as you said, you can use the resources at SOM to help you like experiment, like, oh, I'd like to explore this a little bit. Who can you connect me to in the alumni? And thinking deeper about what kind of activities would be helpful in that process. Erin, I know you've been working on a startup, and I don't know if you can talk a little bit, because I know this is an area, I mean, there's a lot of interest among candidates and entrepreneurial, and Patrick, you talked about your entrepreneurial activity as well, but I'm wondering if you had a chance to use any of the resources around campus. We have 22 centers of entrepreneurship. We have faculty dedicated to the entrepreneurial program at SOM. So I don't know if you want to speak to any of those or if you have experience with any of those resources.
Sure, I'm happy to. Entrepreneurship is really big on Yale's campus. As Amber mentioned, 22 different centers. You might have heard of the City, Center for Innovative Thinking at Yale. This is a really robust place where you can make a startup, work on an existing startup. At Yale, they also have, within SOM, they have the program in entrepreneurship, which is a set of courses and dedicated faculty who specialize in teaching entrepreneurship. There's also Startup Yale. I could go on and on. There's a plentiful amount of resources when it comes to entrepreneurship. There's a plentiful amount of funding. There's a lot of grants on campus to help you fund your startup. So funding is not an issue in terms of expertise. There's incredible faculty entrepreneurs. One that comes to mind is Barry Nailbuff, who started Honest Tea and sold it to Coca-Cola for millions of dollars. He's done a number of other big entrepreneurial things within the food and bev space. So if you're interested in making a startup, working on an existing startup, SOM is definitely the place to be.
Yeah, I think that, and you mentioned Barry Nailbuff, and he started that project with a current student. So, I think that collaboration with the faculty, we have, I would say probably the lowest. I'd challenge someone to find a lower faculty to student ratio. I believe it's 8-to-1 students to faculty at SOM. They're really engaging. They're curious about what students are doing. They want to be supportive. Barry Nailbuff is really the father of the Silver Scholars Program, because he saw that there are these group of dynamic, ambitious folks that are just ready to get started now, as opposed to waiting and deferring or working for several years and then when they know what they want to do now. So I do think that entrepreneurial folks that have entrepreneurial ambitions, I think Silver Scholars is a very interesting program as well, because you could really spend those gap years working on that or working on another startup if you want to kind of get your feet wet, working on in the different phases of the startup community. And there's lots of meetups around campus. So one of the things that we pride ourselves at SOM is that kind of global perspective. And SOM was the first major MBA program to have a global experience requirement. So I was wondering if any of you wanted to talk about how you fulfilled that requirement, or any of your global activities that you want to highlight.
Happy to jump in there, and I think it connects nicely to what we just discussed about the faculty as well. So I went on what's called an international experience. It's something between like a guided trip and a very unusual visit to loads of local companies. It's frankly how I wish more of my trips could be, but you just don't get that opportunity outside traveling with this group of people and it being so well organized. Long story short, we went to Uruguay, which is a country I never really spent a second thinking about before this trip. And we visited loads of local employers. We met with government officers. We had dinner with the head of the central bank. We met members from the current government. We visited business parks. We went into the forest and saw how logging actually works in practice for large industrialized timber production. And so it was a very unusual trip. And I mentioned that it connects to the faculty. We went with an absolutely wonderful member of the faculty, who is widely renowned across SOM for being very close to the students. Professor Caliendo, he used to play soccer with the students on the weekends as well. He has students over for barbecues at his house. And what made this trip really special is that A, he was incredibly high energy about the trip. B, he was extremely well connected. So mostly these IEs are led by professors who come from that country. So of course, Professor Caliendo was an incredible door opener, like I said, enabling that meeting with the governor of the central bank, for example. And then see the personal connection you form with both the students, but also the staff members during those trips is something truly special. So the trip went for something like 10 days, I believe. And then afterwards, Professor Caliendo invited us for another 4 or so days at his personal vacation home in the country. And we spent another 2-3 days just stargazing in rural Uruguay, and people were surfing and things like that. So an absolute blast and a wonderful combination of a very educational trip and at the same time incredible bonding experience, frankly.
Well, I love that. Sounds like an incredible trip.
I will supplement like the non-IE trip because my international experience trip is for Spain, and then it's about to happen with the spring break, so I will be in Spain for 10 days. I want to highlight about other like international aspect of the school. I was taking Arabic class for a full year when I was doing my first year Silver Scholar class, and then that has just been such an incredible experience because it was with the undergrad and I was meeting every day with the student. And then some of those undergrads become my close friend, and then 2 of them went to like the Schwarzman program in Beijing, so I was even able to hang out with them during my gap year. And then if you're international and you decide to spend your gap year internationally, you can also engage with the Yale Club locally. I was heavily involved with the Yale Club of Hong Kong and Singapore, attend a lot of events, and also met alum from different programs who have like the same background as I am. I just find that's incredibly helpful during my gap year in terms of they gave me career advice, they gave me what's life advice, how should I reevaluate happiness in 20s versus 30s, like things like that. That's just like some add-up point that I didn't think about when I applied for the program, but then you kind of, as you go through it, kind of crystallize along with your journey.
Love that. And Erin, you're fairly new, but have you had an international experience yet, or do you have plans for one?
I have not. A lot of my colleagues are going, actually, this coming week is spring break, so a lot of people are taking off. My plan is to hopefully go to Spain next year or during the second year. But I've yet to go on an international trip.
And I see that Jen put the link in the chat. I think it's worth noting that there's several different ways that you can fulfill this requirement. So Patrick talked about the international experience at Ziyi as well. But there's also the Global Social Enterprise Program where you do pro bono consulting in another country. I did this when I was a student and I went to India. I also did it in Bogota, in Colombia. And then we also have our global network of other MBA programs. And this is where you're actually taking a class with another business school around the world. And, every school has their own specialties. So this is a way if you want to get kind of deeper and have that global experience, but also be taking a class that is the specialty of that particular business school. This is a requirement, so it's also baked into your tuition, which I think is something worth noting. I think you still have to pay for flights maybe, but the other expenses to for hotels and food and all of these things. And traveling, as Patrick was talking about, under the auspice of Yale, just gives you that access that is just eye-opening. For myself, I went to South Africa and Namibia on my international experience, which was also really mind-blowing. So maybe let's touch on some of the fun things. So, we talked about, all of the work aspects and career development, but we also know that this is very communal group. There's so many activities. Living in New Haven can be really fun. It's generally good food to be had, and kind of the neighborhood environment where most of the students live. So I don't know if each of you could touch on kind of the fun of being a business school student, maybe an activity that you participated in outside of the job search and the curriculum and all of those things, and maybe a little bit about life in New Haven.
Yeah, I can start. And I would love to highlight two components for me. The first one goes back to having this campus-wide or Yale-wide community. So I'm a member of a Buckley Fellowship, which is essentially like a conservative think tank meets event organizer across Yale campus. And they constantly, whether you're conservative or not, they constantly have incredibly interesting speaker opportunities. So I've had the chance to meet with Vivek Ramaswamy. I've had an invite recently for a dinner with former Vice President Pence in New York at the clubhouse in a few weeks. So they really open some insane doors and give you insights and perspectives into things I would have never thought I get to see. One more dinner I'll highlight is we had dinner with the director of the CIA a few months ago, which absolutely mind-blowing experience. I can't begin to say just how much it truly reshapes your thinking and opens up new horizons. And then the second component is I'm an avid rower with the Yale crew, and it's again wonderful because it brings people from across the campus together in a great environment. You do something that maybe you've already been doing for a long time, or maybe something you just never dared to try, and here's the right space to do so, because we take in novices as well as experienced rowers, and everyone's having a great time. And actually, with that crew, I had the chance to go to China, not once, not twice, but 3 times for rowing regattas to represent Yale. And we had novices in the boat with us as well. So this is definitely not out of reach if you're just thinking about starting rowing. And it's one of my absolute favorite clubs that I can't begin to recommend enough when you do come to Yale.
I can provide a little local color about New Haven. New Haven is a great place to live. In terms of the food, best pizza in the country, in my humble opinion. Frank Pepe, Sally Modern, you have to come try them all. In terms of things to do, there's a lot of great beaches nearby. There's Mystic, Connecticut's a beautiful place to be. So there's a lot. New York's a short train ride away. So there's a lot to do in the area. For me personally, I like going to the theater. So New Haven Theater is really excellent. Yale Repertory Theater, the Schubert Theater, which is a major regional theater. So within New Haven, there's a lot to do.
I have a different perspective of New Haven. I'm not the biggest fan of this city, but then the great part about Yale is like it's only a train away to go to New York. So I'm in New York a lot of weekend just to meet my first year classmate because now they're working there. So there's definitely fun parts in the city. In terms on campus engagement, I've been learning golf and tennis, which is something I've always tried to do. And then the club has been very supportive. And I was also able to meet more people. Another club I really like is the cocktail club. And then last Thursday, there was even a professor coming in teach us how to make cocktail. It's just like incredible way to like meet new people and then learn new skills. But New Haven is great. So.
No, I think those are perfect answers, and I think that you're always going to find folks that are engaged in what you want to be engaged in, right? There's folks that are part of the ski club, and there's the wine and cheese club, and there's the partners club, and there's all sorts of outings and events going on. So you're definitely going to find people that are interested in doing what you want to do. I think it is worth noting too that we don't have classes on Fridays generally, so this is also like space for you. I mean, the idea around it is that it's time for you to network and be going in for coffee chats into the city or along the coastline of Connecticut or Boston. So you have that flexibility, but it also gives you time to enjoy those times. And as much as they're fun, they're also you're building relationships, you're building your network in that process too. As someone who graduated 15 years ago, I'm still in daily contact with my classmates. And it's a very valuable resource, both personally and professionally. So I think that's worth highlighting.
And
So
Amber, if I
yes,
can just jump
please.
in there, at least from my own experience, that very much extends to prospective applicants or actual applicants. I'm still in touch with the people who helped me back when I was applying to Yale, current students in those days, as well as I'm in touch with people who I've been helping the last 3 or 4 years to apply and get into Yale. And whether they got in or not, or some of them got in but decided on a different program elsewhere, I love staying in touch with them. So do drop me a note or a LinkedIn Connect or whatever you prefer. And it's wonderful to hear and support prospective students as well.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. I do think that that's something that is culturally about SOM too, is that the alumni and current like that community aspect, you are going to get a response from an alum if you write to them. People generally want to support one another. We've gone through this shared experience. People show up for the reunions, all of those things that just make it really makes it a richness in your life, personally, from my perspective. I do see questions from the chat. A lot of them are based on questions around the admissions process. So I do hope that you all will join us in a future session. Just go onto our events website and we will have Silver Scholars Q&As, and those are focused on the application. We have our deadline coming up April 8th. So definitely join us for those. Also, you have my email. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have specific questions, especially as you're going through the website or going through the application. I guess we'll end on, there was one question about what makes Yale special. I think we've talked about that a little bit. So maybe as a kind of a last go around, I'd love for you to just talk about what's special about Yale for you, and what advice do you have for candidates preparing to apply to the Silver Scholars Program? What do you wish you had known when you were applying?
I came from a very different environment with UK schools and UK applications, where applications tend to be very formal and everyone's very humble. And so perhaps the one recommendation I have is don't be humble, be proud of what you've done and what you're still going to do, and share that very openly. And I think the most interesting discussions I have with students who are applying to Yale are generally those who are thinking big picture, who have some vision and ideas and are not too afraid to pursue those, whatever may come.
For me, Yale's really about the people. I love the people here, the community. I think that's been a recurring theme of this conversation. The community is like none other. In terms of advice that I would give myself before this application, study for the GMAT and the GRE. I did not do so well. I still managed to get in. So make sure you take those tests seriously. It's not everything, but it is a part of your application. And the second piece of advice would be, it's rather cliche, but be yourself. There is no one size fits all. As you see, all of us on this call, we're all very different. We have different professional interests. We're from different places. So know that there is no type that Yale looks for.
Yeah, I think what I like about Yale the most is like intellectual curiosity from both the student and faculty, and then really like passionate about a certain industry. I know a lot of friends from other school, and I just haven't seen that type of focus from them. So that's like what I like about Yale the most. And also people are incredibly helpful. So the culture is definitely a plus. In terms of for my application, maybe not applicable to people applying for this year, but if you are a junior, like looking to apply next year, I remember I was debating whether to apply round 2 versus round 3. Because I had this like new spring internship that was doing kind of enrich my resume a little bit. And I remember back then the mission was like, it doesn't really matter which round you apply. We just want to see a more robust profile. If you feel like the experience add up to your application, definitely apply for the next round. And I took the advice, I applied round 3 and I got in. So I think if you think you're not ready or you need a little bit more time, it's okay to apply to a later round. Something I would do differently, I probably will talk to more like existing silver scholar when I was applying, but I didn't get to talk to them. So if you have the chance, like reach out to one of us.
Absolutely. And I think, just there's several different ways. We have the student ambassadors page on our website. And so these are people that have volunteered to communicate with prospective students. So I would suggest like go in, maybe find someone that seems interesting to you, reach out to them. They may refer you to someone else who's closer in your interests or can answer your questions, but use that as a starting spot to kind of get a better idea of the experience of the students. Again, this is a program for folks that have thought about their career path, right? So, if I would say as many conversations as you can have before you start the program, it's just going to be helpful for you to make decisions within and connect with the right people once you start. So I think we're running out of time, and I just want to thank you all. Thank you to our panelists for joining us. As an admissions officer, it's so great because we see your applications. We're excited about you as candidates. We see the potential, we see where you're going, and so it's really nice to reconnect and see how the program has been for you and what you've done with those resources. And just really excited for you, really proud of you all. And thank you for everyone who has joined us today. Please continue to stay in touch. Please reach out. And we look forward to potentially having you as applicants this round or in future years. So thank you so much. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Amber.
Thanks so much.